This episode of Shaun of the South is brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition of my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best cure for idle hands was to build something, and by Folklore Brewing in Meadry, quite literally the best brew in Alabama. Visit folklorebrewingandmeadry.com.
Well, you are listening to Shaun of the South, and I'm your host tonight, Sean Dietrich, coming to you live via the podcast airwaves and radio waves all over this fine nation. We have been waiting a long time to do this again. And here we are back again. These folks you see behind me tonight getting ready to play music for you are Chosen Road, everybody. Chosen Road.
But the blood of Jesus, what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. I see nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my cleansing this my plea, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, nothing but the blood of Jesus.
I'm going to read you a little bit of our mail sent in to us from listeners all over this fine country who had nothing better to do than to put pen to paper and tell us a little bit about how they're feeling, or to send us letters asking us to cease and desist under threat of legal penalty. I've been waiting a long time to do that again. Our first letter comes from Janice in McDonough, Georgia. Dear Sean, I've had a rough year, but I bought a dog, and she is black and tan, and she is a hound, and she is my everything. I named her Lucy, short for Lucifer, because she's always getting into stuff she shouldn't, and I don't ever detect any real remorse from her about her sins. So she is a devil dog. But she has made my life so much better after my husband passed. And I'm grateful God made dogs, because since I don't have any kids, I need someone to occupy my time and give my love to. And that's exactly what dogs are. They are someone. Howard Blanche, Katy, Texas. I don't know when I started wood carving or really why, but I did, and I started a long time ago. My first wood carvings were done with a modified X-Acto knife, like the kind you cut carpet with, and I'd wear a chain-link glove to protect my hand. The blades were replaceable and easy to sharpen because all you had to do was buy a new one. Traditional knives are not that easy. Anyway, I started digging into your podcast and I heard all the ads for case knives, and it got me thinking, you know what? Maybe I should try a case knife. So I went out to my local case store, Bayou City Knives in Houston, Texas, and I bought a case knife to start carving. I'm currently carving a Native American on a horse with his hand over his brow, looking into the sun like the statue they have in Kansas City. I love that statue, and I'm hoping to be done with its duplicate sometime before the rapture happens. Seriously, Sean, this is the nicest knife I've owned, and I have you to thank for it. I know this sounds like a straight-out sales pitch, so that's why I'm sharing it with you, because I know you're a case man. Well, dear Howard, I appreciate that free advertisement, and I think I can speak for myself when I say I'm going to be rich for this. Sarah C. in Waco, Texas. Sean, I started listening to your show a long time ago, and your shows disappeared when COVID hit, and then you were in the studio, but I stuck with you. I just wanted to encourage you to keep telling stories because they do mean a lot to some of us. I lost my mom in April, and I have been sort of struggling ever since. I've learned to distract myself because I guess that's all I can do, but sometimes I find myself pretty lonely. I joined a ballroom dancing group for singles, even though I'm almost 50, and I have been learning to dance. It has been awesome, and I'm doing everything I can just to stay out in public and keep positive. Hopefully, I'll get over the sting of missing Mama. Keep up the good work. Your friend, Sarah. Well, dear Sarah, let me know if you ever learn how to do the foxtrot, because I never really got it. Rachel, Langley, Virginia. Sean, this is a funny story, and it's so short, so you'll like it. I was getting some coffee one morning for myself and my husband, and my husband gets up, and he's usually a zombie, and stumbles into the kitchen. So I decided to play a joke on him and pour Coca-Cola in his coffee mug, since it sort of looks the same as black coffee, which is the way he drinks it. Well, he took one drink from his mug, and I was expecting him to make a face, but he said absolutely nothing. And I was like, okay, I guess he's just playing along with my prank. Well, then I took a sip of my coffee and spit it out because I realized it was Coca-Cola. And in my sleepy haze, I had accidentally filled my own cup with Coke, and I got the brunt end of the joke. Feel free to use this story. My husband is such a little snot. Aaron, State College, Pennsylvania. Sean, as a former Amish person, I want to say thanks for the old ways you share in your podcast episodes. They help me not feel so overwhelmed by this world. I left the Amish community in 2018, and I haven't really adjusted to life in the modern world yet. I'm trying, but it's just not the way I know. So I'm grateful for everyone out there who does value the old ways still, because that's the way I was raised, and that's who my people are. My mama quilts, my dad works with wood, and even though being Amish is not right for me right now, you still can't erase the way you were raised. So I love the old world. Thanks for keeping it alive. Keep doing what you're doing. Dear Aaron, thank you for the letter. Jamie Reynolds, Atlanta, Georgia. Sean, I don't like to garden, or at least I never thought I did. But lately I've been having a desire to try to eat more healthy. So I've been raising vegetables inside my laundry room in earth boxes, which are big boxes filled with dirt. And they have been coming out very good, very good. I love homegrown tomatoes the most, but I can't quite master them. I haven't figured out how to grow them in these earth boxes. 2 crops have failed in my laundry room, but if I ever succeed in growing some, I just want you to know I'm sending some to you. Dear Jamie, bring it on. Brianna, Chanute, Kansas. My husband and I bought a farm, and we are raising horses and pigs and some cattle. I will tell you up front, I have no business doing this, and neither does he. But I want to do it, and so does Chase, my hubby. And if not now, when? We're not getting any younger. So we went all in. So far, we've been here a year, and we hate every minute of it. When you see old-time farmers, you think their lives were charming. You don't ever imagine their lives were as hard as they were. But they were hard. They were 10% rest and 140% hard work. I have a new respect for what our people went through, our ancestors. But I'm glad about our decision because I want to feel more in touch with my family in the ways that we are living now compared to the ways that we were living back when we were in Jefferson City, Missouri. They're very different, and I like it better. Anyway, that's just something I thought you'd like to hear about. Sean, we bought a farm. Literally, we bought the farm. Well, man, I hope you don't buy the proverbial farm anytime soon. Benjamin, Carson City, Nevada. Sean, I have an old friend who used to be a rodeo cowboy, and we are chess partners now. We play twice a week. He lives in a nursing home, and he's really good. He beats me silly every time we play. I have never won, not once. He has no family, and neither do I. And even though he's about 40 years older than I am, he makes me feel like I have somebody. Family. It sounded like a story you might like to write, so I thought I'd tell you. Your buddy, Benjamin. Thank you, Benjamin. Rena Baker, Orlando, Florida. You're not going to believe this, but I lost my dog 2 weeks ago, and he was just gone. I posted flyers the old-fashioned way, and I waited, and no one ever came forward. No one ever had anything to say about him, and I gave up thinking that he would ever come back. I asked my neighbors, but no one had seen him. I asked the garbage men. I asked everybody who come to our neighborhood. Nobody had seen him, and I was in a bad place. But then I got a call from a school nearby. The lady on the phone said this dog came to the playground every day and played with the kids and then would leave when the whistle would blow and the kids would come inside. And when they finally caught the dog, the janitor caught him, and he looked at the collar and they called the number. I'm so glad they did, because that number is my number, and that was my dog. I'm even more glad that I had the forethought to get a collar tag from the pet store, or else who knows where he'd be right now. Thank God he's home. His name is Charles. Tell people to use ID tags on their dogs because it just might save their lives. Your friend, Rena Baker. Well, Rena, you've given me the opportunity to close with some remarks which I've always wanted to say ever since I watched Bob Barker. And he would finish every show by saying this: please don't forget to spay and neuter your pets and animals. And that's letters from our listeners. Letters from our listeners. We're going to have another tune here from The Chosen Road. The Chosen Road, everybody. this portion of our program is brought to you by visitnorthalabama.org. The Mountain Lakes Tourist Association visit the 16 North Alabama counties and make this state what it is. Let's talk about fishing for a second. The Alabama Bass Fishing Trail features 13 of Alabama's premier bass fishing lakes that stretch from the mountains of North Alabama heading south to the Mobile Delta. Now, you might lie awake at night sometimes and wonder if you're a fisherman or not. Well, here's the litmus test for you developed by the scientists at the University of Alabama. It's very, very easy. Very easy. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. All you got to do is look in your refrigerator, and if you see tartar sauce or cans of beer, congratulations. You're a fisherman. If you're not, don't worry, because you're about to be one. Alabama is a year-round destination for anglers from across the country who tell their wives they're going fishing, and then they haul very big, heavy coolers into their boats, but often forget their fishing rods at home. North Alabama is home to hundreds of regional and national tournaments across this 52,400 square mile state. So visit northalabama.org to find out more about it, or hashtag VisitNorthAL.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, here by thy great help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, that day when, free from sinning, I shall see thy lovely face, clothed in the blood-washed linen. How I'll sing thy wondrous grace. Come, my Lord, no longer tarry, take my ransom soul away. Send thine angels now to carry me to realms of endless day. great a debtor, daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering part to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above.
Well, I have a real thing for old theaters, a real thing for places like this. I love the look and the feel and nostalgia, I guess you'd call it, of what comes with the memories that fill a place like this. I think of all the souls and all the people who sat in these seats and had dreams and fantasies and ambitions. They were your age once before they went on. They had dreams just like you, and they sat in those plush seats with a young person. Hormones were raging, and all they wanted to do was just be loved. Maybe, if it wasn't too much trouble, get to second base. But I love old theaters like this little red brick building with the white pillars, the Tybee Post Theater, which was built in 1930 here at Fort Screven as a movie house for the soldiers before World War II. And these soldiers were young men with lean, lank bodies and big ears and buckshot freckles still, clad in their olive uniforms, and they'd hook arms with a beautiful woman with rolled hair or finger-waved hair or bob haircuts, looking like Hedy Lamarr or Veronica Lake, and they'd walk into this building, and this was where they spent their romance, like a wad of money in their wallet, and they'd sit in these seats. A lot of famous people sat in here. Johnny Mercer sat right over there. Johnny Mercer, the famed Savannah songwriter who wrote over 1,500 songs that have become staples in the great American songbook, songs like I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, but my legs ain't bold and my cheeks ain't tan. He wrote one of my mother's favorite songs. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. He wrote songs like The Days of Wine and Roses. He wrote Candy. I went and visited his house when I was much younger in Savannah, off Lincoln Street, I believe it was, just off Gwinnett. And you can really feel the spirit of Johnny Mercer in Savannah. He sat right over there. Right over there. It warms the cockles and chambers of my heart to think that he was in this theater. Also, in this theater, right up there, was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Sat in this theater and watched a movie. This movie house, built in 1930, the first movie house to feature talkies in the state of Georgia. General George C. Marshall sat over here, and he wore a gruff look on his face the whole time, and the rest of this place would have been filled with soldiers and their families and their friends and their women and their girlfriends. Beautiful place. Of course, whenever I come to Tybee, I immediately think, when I look about that water way out there, that cool blue water, of the incident in 1958, which I can tell by the looks on your faces that you don't really know what I'm talking about. Well, I have a second, so I might as well tell you about it. there was a mid-air collision between an F-18 and a B-47 bomber. Now, the B-47 bomber was carrying a Mark 15 nuclear weapon. This weapon weighed 7,600 pounds and sat way in the back. And when the pilot of the B-47 realized he was on a collision course with that other warplane, he jettisoned the bomb over the Atlantic Ocean, and the bomb fell out and plopped into the deep blue drink somewhere off Wassaw Sound. The two planes collided, and after that, a recovery effort was sent out into the Atlantic to fetch the weapon, the nuclear weapon, and it was not found. It had sunk into the soft ocean floor, and there it has been since 1958. If that doesn't make you feel like you have to go to the bathroom, to the people who are listening to this on the podcast airwaves, if we are interrupted by a very loud sound and we suddenly go radio silence, you will know why. Tybee Island is special to me. When I was a young man, we lived with my aunt and uncle, who lived just outside Atlanta in the hinterlands, in a rural area. My sister, my mother, and I lived in this little tiny room above their garage. And this garage was an automatic garage, so whenever my uncle's Ford would come roaring up the drive, we'd hear the underneath us. And he came home late because he worked late, so it was always, when we were in bed, we would hear underneath us. And I would be asleep on this sofa sleeper, which could have doubled as a medieval torture device. The sofa sleeper had a big piece of rebar that went straight through the middle of it. My sister and I shared this bed. And things got very cramped in that house in Georgia. And it was one summer that my mother decided, out of her merciful nature, to take us on our first vacation since my father died. Living there ever since the funeral had happened. And now we needed a break. And my mother was intent upon helping us forget our sadness. And the best way she could come up with was to take a vacation from our grief. And that's how she put it. She came home one day. She sat around the table with my aunt and uncle and me and my sister. She said, "We're going to take a vacation. I've been looking. I've been reading about places at the bookstore all day today. And I've decided we're taking a vacation." And my aunt looked at her and she said, "Can you really afford that?" You see, these were different times, and a single woman raising 2 children on her own didn't go off on vacations. This wasn't how it worked. Vacations were for people who had trust funds. Vacations were for families who got into their family coupe or their station wagon and drove clear across the U.S. all the way from God knows where, the Midwest, to Orlando, Florida, to put on mouse ears and walk around and eat ethnic food in a place that it was no more ethnic than a fire hydrant. But vacations were not for people like us. They just weren't. And yet my mother was going to take us on one, and we were excited. That night, my sister and I went up into our little bedroom, and I packed my bags. And my sister packed her little suitcase. My mother was packing. And we were asking her, "Where are we going? Where are we going to go?" She said, "We're going to Tybee Island." "Where?" "Tybee Island. It's just off the coast. It's off Savannah. It's very pretty, very pretty. We're going to go walk around Savannah. We're going to see one of the most historic cities in the U.S. It's got a little place in Savannah where they have, it's called Trustee's Garden. And in Trustee's Garden, all the seeds from the old country came over here and they were experimented with in the soil of Trustee's Garden. That means that every crop of cotton, every crop of corn, every crop of soybeans, and all of our cotton and corn and soybeans, they all descend from the seeds in Trustee's garden. And they got places over there that are older than the states themselves. Oh, we're going to have a good time. But Tybee Island was where we were going to base ourselves. We were going to get a little condo on the beach, a rental house on the beach, that is. And actually, it wasn't even on the beach. It was across the street from a street that was across the street from a beach. When we got there, after a long drive, I'll never forget, my mother pulled over on the bridge that is into town, where the gold grass stretches on for miles. Those grass flats and salt flats stretch on for miles toward the horizon, and they're cut with a ribbon of gray silver water which weaves through them like a restless worm. And my mother stepped out our old Ford, and she looked at that scene, and she put her hands on her hips, and she said, "I want a fish sandwich." And so, by George, we got in that car, and we drove around until my mother found a place that served a fish sandwich. The next morning, my mother was out there in the sun porch, and she announced that we were going to do something really, really fun. I said, "Well, what is it? No, it's really fun." Well, I couldn't imagine what could be more fun than being away from our problems. And because that's what it felt like being here. We were away. Well, my mother gave me a brochure that I had not seen yet. And on the front of the brochure was a huge speedboat, and on the stern of the boat was a long line stretching 500 feet into the air behind it with a little humanoid figure attached to a parachute. She said, "Sean, you're going parasailing." I said, "Do what?" She said, "It's going to be fun. You're going to go parasailing. They put you on the back of this boat. They sling you way up there in the sky, and you get to see everything. It's expensive, but you're going to do it, and I want you to do it and have fun." I said, "I don't have any desire to be 500 feet above anything." The next thing I knew, we were driving across the island until we landed in this little marina, and there was a dock with a huge speedboat sitting out front, and there were men on the speedboat with very long hair and shirts off, and they had emblazoned tattoos on their very tanned skin. And I looked at my mother, this chubby little boy with the buckshot freckles. I said, "Please don't make me do this." She said, "You're going to love it." I said, "Define love." We walked toward that boat, my mother and sister and I felt a new kind of empathy for people undergoing capital punishment. I was trembling. I was shaking. I really, really was. And when I got to that dock, the man who was steering the boat was wrapping a line around his elbow and his fist, and he looked at me with wraparound shades on, and he said, "Hey, I'm Captain Ron." I said, "Look, I'm going to level with you, Captain Ron. I'm very, very scared right now. I'm very, very scared. I'm a scared boy, and I just don't know that I want to do this. I saw the brochure and I read about it, but I'm not convinced that it's safe." He said, "Oh, listen to me. What's worrying you? Tell me." I said, "Well, I would imagine that what worries me most is that I could die." "Oh, listen to me. Ain't nothing to worry about. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine." And then he twisted an extra lime into his Corona, and he handed my mother a stack of waivers to sign. My mother applied her John Hancock to the ream of notebook paper and handed it back to Captain Ron, and the next thing I know, Captain Ron and his loving assistant were outfitting me in a Michael Jackson harness. And the next thing I knew, we were riding way out into the drink. And I was sitting on on the stern, and my mother was sitting beside me, and my sister was on the other side, and I had my hands in my lap, and I was reciting the 23rd Psalm in my head. And the wind was in my hair, and we lost sight of land, and Captain Rom was listening to Sweet Melissa by Leonard Skinner. And then it was time. There comes a point in every man's life when it's time. There's no more putting it off. You got to do what you're going to do, and you got to do it without second-guessing yourself. And this was my chance. I stepped onto this large platform with a huge winch embedded in the center. They put this enormous salvaged World War II parachute attached to my harness, and they looked at me with smiles. Captain Ron lit a cigarette and said, "This is going to be good. We've never had anybody so young do it before." And I looked at him and I said, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And well, the boat picked up speed. And then the winch started to let out just a little bit at a time. Tick, 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 tick. And my feet disconnected from the platform. And I levitated off until I was above that boat and flying in the air. Weightlessness. Before I knew it, I was 100, 200, 300, 400 feet in the air, floating above planet Earth. The Earth is 75% water, and you never really think about this until it's all you can see. And when you are up so high, and you are close enough to high-five the seagulls who are looking at you as if this kid don't belong here, it does something to you. It changes you. It changes your perspective, and to change your perspective changes who you are. I had seen life from down below for so long that that's what I thought life was. I saw life from Earth. But up there, everything looked so small. Buildings look tiny. The railroad tracks way yonder in the distance where there's a distant train running, it looks like a tiny little centipede. And the hills, which look so swelling and great down below, they just look level from up above. All you see is colors. You see the blue of the water and the green of the land and the gold of the grass. All of the little huts and establishments and places of business and things that are so important to mankind, they shrink into nothingness up there. You can hardly even see them. And I felt myself begin to smile. I felt myself smile big. And I felt some sort of letting go happen. It was almost like my shoulders came down from where my ears were. And I exhaled, and I was 500 feet above the earth and happy. The boat went around in figure eights for a long time, and finally they started to crank me back down. And I could hear down below that the motor had malfunctioned. And I began to lose my serenity very fast, because there was this smoke rising from the winch down below, and my mother was looking at me, and the look she had, I could tell from her body language from so far up, was one that did not suggest ultimate safety. It was a look that you would see if someone pulls over to I don't know, let's say, watch a fire. I was up in the air for a grand total of 16 minutes until the speedboat started to run out of gas. Finally, they slowed to enough of a speed that two men were able to yank me in by hand until my feet hit the deck. And when my feet were on solid wood of that boat, my mother said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I said, "I hope you brought a change of pants." That night we went home and my mother made grouper sandwiches that she'd gotten at a seafood market in town. She made raw oysters, and we topped them with cocktail sauce and put them on saltine crackers, and it was a wonderful night because once you've cheated death, nothing can touch you. And as I stand here in this building tonight, several decades later, I'm no longer a chubby boy with freckles and buck teeth and ears that look like a taxi cab riding down the road with its doors open. I think we all come full circle at one point in our life. I think we all find ourselves in a geographic location where we can see just a little remnant of who we used to be looking back at us. And today before the show, my wife was driving around town and I had her stop by that old rental house that was goat vomit green. And it was enough. And I tried very hard, not to think about what happened in 1958 with that Mark 15 nuclear weapon falling into the ocean. Hey, thank you very much for having me this evening. It's been a wonderful pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Shaun of the South. It's been a bona fide privilege coming to you each week like we've been doing for many years. We've been gone a little while, but boy, it feels good to be back. We've been waiting a long time for the world to calm down a little bit so that we could do this again. We love coming through your cell phones, your Bluetooth speakers, your minivan stereo systems, and I just want to give a shout out to all the people who listen to us while you work out or run on a treadmill. We carbohydrate addicts respect to you. This episode was brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition of my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best cure for idle hands is to build something, and by Folklore Brewing and Meadery, quite literally the best brew in Alabama. Visit folklorebrewingandmeadery.com. The music heard behind me tonight was Jonathan Buckner, Zachary Alvis, Tyler Robertson, and Josh Hicks, who make up Chosen Road. Four good friends established a band in 2009 and have traveled across the pond from America to perform in Scotland, France, and Ireland. Not bad for a couple American boys. Their recent album, Appalachian Worship, spent over 30 weeks on Billboard magazine's top bluegrass albums chart. Do yourself a favor and look them up at chosenroadmusic.com and download their album today. If you feel like telling me a little bit about yourself, drop me a line and tell me about your birthday announcements, wedding invitations, and potluck socials, and I'll do my best to read them over the air for my friends, because I love to do that sort of stuff for my friends. Speaking of friends, when the going gets tough, the tough get the heck out of Dodge. Adios.
How wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.